There are moments in life that split everything into two: the before and the after. For me, that moment happened on a Tuesday morning in March. I was lying on a hospital bed, counting ceiling tiles, waiting to be taken into surgery. My hands were cold, my heart was racing, and the last thing I remembered before the anesthesia pulled me under was my husband kissing my forehead and whispering, "Everything is going to be okay." He lied. My name is Diana. I was 36 years old, a senior financial analyst at one of the most respected firms in the country. I had built my career quietly, carefully, over 12 years of early mornings and late nights. I earned well, very well, $130,000 a year to be exact. My husband, Ryan, did not know that number, not because I was hiding it out of dishonesty, but because Ryan had always been particular about money, about pride, about being the provider. Early in our marriage, when I had started earning more than him, I had watched something shift in his eyes. A quiet discomfort he never spoke out loud but carried everywhere. So I protected him from it. I kept my salary vague. I said enough whenever he asked. I paid my share of the bills from a separate account and let him feel like the foundation of our home. Looking back now, that was my biggest mistake. We had been married for 9 years. 9 years of building a life together. A home, a routine, a future we had talked about in whispered plans on Sunday mornings. I thought we were solid. I thought what we had was real. But somewhere along the way, Ryan had started to see me differently. Not as his partner, as a burden. I had been diagnosed with a condition that required surgery, nothing life-threatening, but serious enough to need weeks of recovery. Ryan had seemed supportive at first, attentive even. He drove me to appointments. He sat beside me in waiting rooms. He held my hand in the hospital corridor on the morning of my surgery. And then he walked out of that corridor, straight to a lawyer's office. I didn't know that yet. I was unconscious on an operating table, completely vulnerable, completely trusting. But what I didn't know that morning was that the man who had kissed my forehead and promised me everything would be okay had already decided I was someone he wanted to leave behind. I woke up from surgery to a quiet room. White walls, soft beeping, the kind of stillness that feels peaceful until you realize something is missing. Ryan wasn't there. The nurse told me he had stepped out. I believed her. I closed my eyes and drifted back into the fog of recovery, telling myself he had gone to get coffee, to make a call, to breathe. He came back 3 hours later, quiet, distant. He sat in the chair beside my bed and looked at his phone, more than he looked at me. I told myself he was stressed, that watching someone you love go through surgery is frightening. I made excuses for his silence the way I had learned to make excuses for so many things over the years. 4 days later, I came home. And 2 days after that, a courier arrived at our door with an envelope. Divorce papers, already signed, filed the same day I had gone into surgery. I read them 3 times. Then I sat down on the kitchen floor, still in my recovery clothes, still moving carefully from the surgery. And I stayed there for a very long time. Ryan came home that evening and found me sitting at the kitchen table with the papers in front of me. He didn't look surprised. He didn't look guilty. He looked relieved, like he had been holding his breath for weeks and had finally been allowed to exhale. "I've been unhappy for a long time," he said. "I think we both know this hasn't been working." I looked at him, this man I had protected, supported, loved quietly for 9 years. And I felt something inside me go completely still. "You filed while I was in surgery," I said. He looked away. The timing wasn't ideal, but it needed to be done. That was the moment, not when I found the papers, not when I read them. But that moment, when he looked away, was when something in me stopped breaking and started calculating. He had no idea what I earned. He had no idea what I had saved. He had no idea that the accounts he thought were modest were anything but. And he had absolutely no idea that in this state, filing for divorce from a spouse recovering from surgery, with documented evidence of the timing, was going to cost him far more than he had planned. I called my lawyer that same night. What followed was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was precise. My lawyer was very good. And the case, as she explained it to me calmly over coffee, was remarkably straightforward. Ryan had filed on the day of my surgery, a fact stamped and documented by court records. I had medical records showing my condition and vulnerability, and I had 9 years of financial contribution to our shared life. Contribution? Ryan had consistently underestimated because he had never known the full picture. When my salary was disclosed during proceedings, Ryan's lawyer went very quiet. Ryan himself called me that evening. For the first time since everything had unfolded, his voice had lost that comfortable certainty. "Why didn't you ever tell me what you made?" he asked. "You never asked," I said. "You just assumed." The settlement was decided 4 months later. The house, which I had contributed to significantly, went to me. A portion of the assets Ryan had always considered his were recalculated in light of the full financial picture. He walked away with considerably less than he had anticipated. When he signed those papers in a lawyer's office, while I was unconscious, I heard later, through people we both knew, that he had expected a clean exit. A quiet divorce from a woman he believed was financially dependent on their marriage. He had calculated wrong, in every possible way. I moved forward slowly. Recovery, from the surgery and from everything else, takes time. There were difficult mornings. There were nights I questioned everything. But there was also, underneath all of it, a quiet and growing sense of something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. I am not someone who believes in revenge for its own sake. What happened was not about punishing Ryan. It was about truth. The truth of what I had contributed, what I had endured, and what I deserved. He made his choice on the day I was most vulnerable. And in doing so, he revealed exactly who he was. And I made my choice too. To stop shrinking. To stop protecting people from the truth of who I am. He signed those papers thinking he was leaving behind someone small. He had no idea who he was actually walking away from. And by the time he figured it out, it was already too late.